Hey, this is Bruce McGill. You are listening to the MacGyver podcast with Mac Jackson. MacGyver Jackson.
Hi, I'm Richard Dean Anderson.
Name's MacGyver.
Colonel Jack O'Neill, SG-1.
My name is Pratt, Ernest Pratt.
I always get a happy, tingly feeling when I see those guys.
Name one contract that I failed to execute.
MacGyver.
Oh, here we go.
You're a target, and I don't intend to miss.
Over my rotting corpse. I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? Glowing eyes, cliche behavior, evilness, that kind of thing.
Is mental illness contagious?
You think?
You can do anything you want to do if you put your mind.
Well, you do have a penchant for pulling brilliant ideas out of your butt. Head. Out of your head when we need them. Oh, the stuff's already here. I just find a different way to use it.
I like your attitude.
Permission to take a team through the Stargate, sir.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of the MacGyver podcast. I'm your host, Mac Jackson. And today we got a big one for you. Not that they're not all big. I love everybody. But this was a harder to get than usual guest because he's not on social media. The wonderful Jack Dalton himself, Bruce McGill. I had struggled with how I was going to introduce him because he's been in everything. But because we know him first and foremost as Jack Dalton, there you go. Yeah, not easy to get a hold of, but thankfully through the help of friends, we connected. And yeah, he's on the, we had some trouble last week with this was supposed to be done, but the internet went down on the day of recording. So we finally connected, and he starts off sharing why he's not, well, one of the many reasons why he's not on social media. Apparently he had a stalker back in the days of MacGyver. So we're just going to dive right in. Thanks for watching. Please share. You can go to our, if you want to support that and the audio series and all the other wonderful things from the Forever Adventure Network, please go to that website, the Forever Adventure Network, where we have a Patreon. If you want to throw a couple cents our way, it's appreciated, and it helps with promotion and making sure other people get to hear and watch all that we have. All right. Thank you for all your support, as always. And thanks for being part of our community, and welcome to the adventure. And now, the wonderful Bruce McGill.
I was going to ask you, have you had trouble with that in the past?
Oh man, I have way back during, in fact, when MacGyver was on the air, the original MacGyver, the real MacGyver.
That's right.
I had a stalker. Back then there was only 3 networks. Mm-hmm. And if you were on a network show that was prime time, you know, millions and millions of people watched it. And among those millions, there would inevitably be people who invented a relationship that did not exist. And like I had one, she was so crazy. And I used to answer fan mail directly that came to my house.
Sure.
And it got crazier and crazier. And I was advised, well, just don't answer anything that comes to your house. And so I quit, and she went nuts, like nutsoid. She believed that she was destined to be my wife. Since her other boyfriend had died, he was Ted Bundy. Wow. If you remember Ted Bundy, the serial killer.
Kind of hard to forget.
So,
yeah.
And about that time, there was another girl on a network show, and a stalker showed up at her front door and killed her. So then I was just advised by law enforcement. They said, look, there's nothing we can do if they have not really done anything, but at the very least, we would advise you not to answer any mail that comes to your house. So then I got, like our house, we don't even have house numbers on our houses. And we have a private off-site mailbox. And I had that, and then I also had identity theft. When I got old enough for Social Security, somebody probably out of, I don't know, West Africa or some Middle Eastern or Central European country applied for and got my Social Security. And I discovered it because an accountant said, you may as well I guess it was 67 or 8. May as well take it because, just you may as well. And I tried to take it and I was told, no, you can't get your Social Security. You already got it. I said, no, I did not. So I've become very careful. And yes, I do. I haven't had, because I'm so careful, I haven't had issues with people illegally using my image. Because if they have a commercial venture and they want to use, say, a clip from MacGyver or Animal House, they have to get permission and they have to either pay you or arrange for you to do it pro bono.
Wow.
So, you're protected, but thieves are thieves.
Yeah. Well, I remember because, when I started doing this, I thought, the whole idea is to promote the good. It's to, show the good influence that MacGyver's had. And therefore, all the people that I've been in contact with and have formed friendships with through this show are wonderful, just exceptional people, every single one of them. And I thought, all right, well, if I can reach out and kind of let them know that this is more about the human interaction. And some people are easier to find than others. And when I didn't see you on social media, I thought, you know what? I bet you there's a story there, an unfortunate story. But
actually, not so much. I had, when it first, all that stuff, I first saw Twitter. Gerard Butler had it when we were doing Law Abiding Citizen.
Mhm.
And he was on it like, because he was doing business and he was producer of the movie. So he thought he could increase his box office by doing it.
Yeah.
But I watched and saw him like way too much time spent looking into that little screen, taken away. So I thought, I don't think so. And I've often referred to myself as undercover actor.
Yeah, well, it's like, what was it? Harrison Ford said, I work in Hollywood. I don't live in Hollywood.
Yeah, well, I don't anymore either. But I mean, I still got a house there. But it's, it's beyond that. It's my friends that were deeply into social media, however long ago it was, 5 years, 8 years later, some of them, not all of them, are filled with regret because they have yet another portal into their life.
Right.
And I don't have the, basically, I guess I didn't have the need for it. I didn't feel like it was important to me career-wise, although for a lot of people at a lot of levels, it is.
Sure.
When you go to audition for, say, a television series, one of the questions used to be, how tall are you? Now it's how many followers do you have?
I know.
And I'm at the stage where, fine, you find me, you hire me, that'll be just fine. But I don't have any followers. And if I do, I try to have them arrested.
Yeah, well,
it's just simply self-preservation.
Right. And that's, I mean, luckily, I was going to see, I don't have to introduce you now because one, you introduced yourself, which I appreciate, but normally after the credits, I'll say, hey, everybody, and do our intro. But I didn't know how I was going to introduce you other than to say, if you've watched TV or movies in the last forever, you're going to recognize Bruce McGill, you know, so you're lucky that you're right. You don't have to beat the bushes for work. You're thankfully well known.
Well, it's also the less exposure I have personally, the easier it is to be believed as a different character. And
that's interesting.
Into the word and always was a character actor. And it just what my performance is depends on what they wrote. And my beginnings and upbringings were with some pretty good writers like G.B. Shaw and William Shakespeare and those kind of guys. So you knew the material was good. So you start, that's where you always start, and I still do. Start with what's written.
So
fill it with energy.
Well, and that's the thing too. Like you started as a kid actor, did you?
I did. I got drafted into a Johnny Appleseed when I was about 11 or 12 because the guy playing Johnny Appleseed got bad grades. And his mother said, no more extracurriculars for you, young man. And it was like 2 weeks till the presentation. I think it was in the 6th grade. And so this poor music teacher who was directing the operetta, she had me in choir, and I'm musical, so she knew I could sing. So she said, you're playing Johnny Appleseed. And I said, this is before Vietnam. So and my father was, very authoritarian. And teachers were just an extension of that. So if she said, you're going to be Johnny Appleseed, I said, yes, ma'am.
Darn right.
So I was, and it went very well. And, any kid at 11 or 12 is looking for positive reinforcement. And most kids get it, boy kids, from athletics. But I got it from a standing ovation in the Catholic Gymatorium at my elementary school by being Johnny Appleseed. Plus, two prettiest girls in the 6th grade were in the show, and that was cool.
Well, there you go. Yeah. What more motivation do you need
Anyway,
after
that
that?
was really, when I tell the story of my beginnings, that's really a very seminal event, because I said, well, that was good. I'll just keep doing that. That's fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went away to 7th grade, where you actually go from class to class, and started doing every play I could get my hands on. So by the time I got to New York City when I was 25, I'd done 100 plays in front of a live audience. And there is no better teacher.
Right. And I'll tell you, I know it becomes an addiction in a good way, because there's
a
that
lot of things less healthy you could be addicted to.
right. But there's that live energy that, and I started around the same time. I just pedaled my little hiney down to an audition and walked in and went, what do you got and what do you need me to do?
Here's what I got.
Yeah.
Here's my shtick.
And they had a guy with the piano and said, all right, let's see if you could sing, which, I sang before I could talk. And so, it was musicals and stuff, but that whole...
I bet the lyrics were good before you could talk.
He's got a good rhythm and I can dance to it, but I don't know what he's saying. But yeah, to walk out on the stage and nail a line, or in some cases a song, and know that you affected the audience and it's live.
Yeah, it's great.
It's great. The problem is the addiction is, okay, once it's over, and I do that now with, singing and performing music. It's great at the moment and you love it, but you want to keep going because it's so wonderful that once it's over, you go, okay, when's the next time I get to do this?
Yeah, there was like something that I termed post-show depro, which is post-show depression. If you did a big play, and I named it when I was in college, and I did, many, many very well-mounted shows because it was the University of Texas, and they had a budget. I didn't realize that this is going to be the best mounted productions until I get to Broadway or public theater.
Yeah.
But when the thing was over and you worked so hard, and you, besides liking that energy on stage, there's your whole tribe of everyone working on the show. Whatever they do, whether they're carpenter or costumes or cast, you have a society that's not just society at large. You have a society of relatively like-minded people, most of whom are very different from each other, because I always liked how inclusive the theater was. Like if you're willing to do something, you're welcome. Come on in. Just don't be mean to anybody, or the rest of the gang will beat your ass.
Right. And you know what? I had a guy like that. I was doing a play. I'll never forget his name, Johnny Pigeon. He's since passed away, but he was a guy, nice guy. I personally didn't have a problem with him, but he had the nerve to tell the director, you know what? I don't like the direction this play is going in. Now, she didn't write the play. She's just the director. And he's going to tell her, no, I think I should do it this way. And I think I should do it that way. And, the director, she's like, okay, but I'm the director. I'll tell you from my point of view, if I see something you need to do different. No. Well, long story short, she goes, that's it. I can't do this. Get out.
Yeah, you're fired.
Yeah. And
one of my closest friends when I was in New York, a very, very good actor. And he was the first Billy in Streamers by David Rabe. And it was directed by Mike Nichols, this production he did. And he got fired.
Ooh.
And Mike Nichols, who I did a film with and a play with, who was great, I loved him. He fired him because he said, look, John was the best Billy we ever had by far, but it just wasn't worth it. Whatever his problem was, his Catholic guilt or whatever the issue was, because John was contentious and very smart, but in a weird way, beyond the self-destructiveness of liquor, etc., he had a kind of a self-destructive, how could you like me so much? Because here's the kind of piece of junk I am. And he just wouldn't let anything go. And Mike Nichols, who is like one of the smartest, most thorough thinking, in command guys I ever worked with, just decided, okay, this is taking too much of our time. You're fired. And John was amazed because he knew, really inside, he knew he was that good. And he just couldn't believe that this guy cut him. And I think it was really good for him. He didn't like it, but he was mostly mystified. But it was just he was taking too much time and energy out of the whole project. And rehearsal periods are great. I've done plays in as short as 10 days, and I've done plays where we had 6 weeks. And then I've done Broadway where you have out of town and previews and all that. But it's always finite, and there's a time coming when you have to quit exploring and start polishing.
Right.
And then Mike Nichols knew that very well because, he was just the best. I just loved working with him. People get fired even if they're really good.
And it keeps you humble.
Yeah, it didn't work for John.
No. Well, yeah, I remember, you'd practice. The work so well you could do everybody else's part. And then you do it for how long the play's supposed to run. And you go, okay, well, I don't have to, remember this anymore. And then a couple weeks later, I get a call. Oh, we're taking this on the road. We're doing what now? Oh, yeah. It went over so well. We now have to.
It comes back pretty easily.
Yeah. But you're like,
I did the same thing. I mean, I hit what I call it hitting delete because there's not enough room in the front brain for everything and what's coming. And but I still, as I'm getting older, I do memorization just for the exercise.
Right.
Now I don't get so many action parts as I get talky parts. So it's really important that I be able to retain lines, and I can. I mean, it's still something I have.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Well,
it's like a muscle. Exercise it.
Exactly. And boy, when you don't for a while, like, I could use the example that you would appreciate, playing guitar. If I haven't picked up my guitar in a while, all right, I know the song, but I start playing it, and that first time through, I'm aggravated because I'm not strumming it or picking it the way I want to. You know what I mean? It's not as precise, but you get through that. I've learned that if you get through that frustrating reunion moment, the next time it's better. Now your memory starts, your muscle memory goes.
And I don't play for audiences or professionally, so it's really just a meditation for me. But it's been tremendously useful in the hours I've spent in trailers waiting for a shot to be set up. And that's really where I got pretty good, is sometimes like on the big movies, like I'm thinking now of Cliffhanger. I mean, I would get dressed, go to work, and sometimes they would never call me. 12 hours. That's a lot of time sitting in your trailer.
Yeah.
In Italy.
Trying to stay out of the way.
And never a problem. I'm either on the set in my chair or in my trailer, or I'll tell the AD exactly where I'm going to be.
Yeah.
The great thing about your dressing room is it has a bathroom. So, it's just so much easier for me to stay there. And I read and I play the guitar and I work on the story, work on the script. No, it just makes it an AD's dream.
Yeah, right.
Never have to wonder, where is that actor?
Yeah.
Some actors, they'll wander. They can't stand it. They can't sit still, and they'll sweat out their clothes or spoil their makeup, and there I am. I'm sitting in there working on something by List or whoever.
Well, it makes sure you get to come back and work with other people again too, if you're the guy who doesn't cause trouble.
Yeah, leave no stone unturned. It's one thing to be great. It's one thing to be great, pleasant to work with, on time, prepared, sober, till at least till the last shot.
Right.
So, when I find that they're overworking us like past 12 hours every day, I'll take a little airplane bottle for the anything after 12 hours. I'll have a drink, unless it's Michael Mann, because he'll go 18. You can't risk it.
Really?
Usually it's usually it's less than, and it's not as common now as it used to be. But usually it's only another 30, 45 minutes. And what is becoming tedious, have a drink. It's fun again. if you're a perfect drinker as I am.
Yeah. Well, what age did you start playing guitar at, and what motivated you?
Well, I started playing piano when I was 6.
Hmm.
And what motivated me to switch was the kids in the neighborhood thought going home to practice your Beethoven was, real square.
Hmm.
But playing a Beatles song was pretty cool. So I just said, okay, I'm going to take all this and put it on the guitar. And the portability, it's very tough to carry around. But a keyboard, they're just, it's not as easy. Plus, it was just more, gave you more cachet with your peers to play the guitar.
Sure.
So that was it. And I was asked to play lead guitar with a band when I was 14, I guess. And at the same time, I was asked to play the leprechaun in Finian's Rainbow. So I sat in with the band and they weren't good. So I thought, if I'm in this band and even one guy is not good, the music will suck.
Mm-hmm.
But if I do this part in the play, when it's my turn to talk, the rest of them have to be quiet. I'll do the play.
Yeah.
And I never look back.
Wow.
But I never stopped playing either. And I've played in various, I've played on stage, I've played in TV shows. And It's a wonderful adjunct to character sometimes.
Oh yeah, definitely. It definitely adds a layer.
It does.
I saw you got to perform on Rizzoli and Isles.
I did.
Yeah. I'm like, oh hey, and then I'm watching your fingers. I'm like, all right, are they dubbing this or is he really playing guitar? Because this is before I knew,
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no, he's playing the chords. He's got the fingers where they're supposed to be. Okay.
Yeah. He's playing finger style. He knows what he's doing.
Exactly. So do you remember when you made the jump from, say, plays to television and movies?
Sure. I was doing Shakespeare in the Park. And I had an agent by then, and I got an audition for Jonathan Demme's first studio feature called Handled with Care. And I auditioned for it, and he flipped out, loved it. But he was a first-time director, so then I had to go back and read for the head of casting at Paramount. Marion Doherty was a great character. And I can still see her backlit in a window of what used to be the Gulf Western building, Central Park behind her, smoking a cigarette with a whiskey voice. Okay, let's see what the kid's doing cartwheels about. Let's see what you got. So I did it and got the part. And that was I didn't realize then how difficult it is to get a principal role in a studio picture. But I did, and the picture was not a financial success, but it was a critical success.
Right.
And then came Animal House. And back then I avoided television because in those days, television, it was the 3 networks. And they saw you, the deal was if they saw you free on TV, they wouldn't pay for you at the movies.
Really?
That was what they thought. But it was also it was a snob thing. Now, of course, you better do a streaming show. Forget it.
Oh yeah.
It's everything. And so the TV came slowly, and I also realized, okay, it's America. I need to earn some money. And the theater, even the good stuff I was doing didn't pay that well. But network TV paid pretty well.
Right.
Even though I never signed up with MacGyver, I wouldn't sign a contract because I didn't want to quit doing my films and everything else. And I would have made a lot better deal if I'd have been a series regular, which they wanted.
Well, that was going to be my question because, I know them by heart and I've seen them a trillion times, but in my mind, and here's an interesting thing that I figured out last night was in my mind, I figured, all right, Jack Dalton comes on once or twice a season. That wasn't the case. You were on a lot in a few seasons. And then the 6th season, you weren't on at all. And then they brought you back on the 7th. And I thought, wow, you know what? You're almost a regular. You were as close to a regular, they spaced you out well, I think.
Well, they had a deal where I wouldn't make a deal for more than 3 shows at a time because I didn't know, I was busy with other stuff.
Sure.
And then every time I did a new 3 shows, they had to renegotiate.
Huh.
Even though I never got to network series regular money, I did way better than most recurring.
Oh yeah, sure.
And at the end, when they said no more money, I got a kind of script approval, which was unheard of.
Really?
Yeah, because I had 30 days to say yes or no to something based on what else was offered to me in the meantime.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like I could tell them, no, don't let MacGyver do that. But I could say, no, I don't want to do this. It was amazing. It was really, and it just happened, one negotiation at a time.
Yeah. Well, that was, let's start at the beginning, I guess, because as far as the MacGyver-centric questions go, I don't want to forget, not that I get stuck on the minutia, but do you remember how that came about? Did you have to audition or did they come to you?
Oh, no. They had seen a performance I did on Miami Vice, very flamboyant performance. And I wasn't doing, I mean, that was a really exceptional, special deal. I did the Miami Vice.
Mm-hmm.
But the guy that DP'd Animal House, Charlie Carell, was directing MacGyver. So I said, thank you, but no thank you. I'm not doing TV right now. And Charlie heard about it and he said, I'll get that guy. So he called me in New York and he said, what are you doing? And I said, well, Charlie, it's February, it's New York, I'm freezing. And he said, come on and do this. It's not a long, you die at the end of the episode. It's just one show. Come on out. So I said, okay, good idea, I will. And I did it. And, it was a good part, no question. And so I did it. And then months later, my agent called and said, they want you to do a MacGyver. I said, oh, really, what role? Same role. I said, no, that guy died.
They flew off in a plane. That was it.
Exactly. But remember, he died over the horizon.
Right.
So my agent said, well, this was the days Dallas was very popular. If Bobby Ewing can come back in the shower. And so I said, okay. So that's how it came about. And then I liked it and I liked Richard. And it was it wasn't too much. I never got fried.
Right. Well, and I'll tell you let me give you my point of view because I was watching MacGyver from the beginning. And right away, wow, this is a show unlike any other, and loved it. And then second season, you come along and there's a new dynamic. And, from the viewer's point of view, and I think you had said this, I think I read, where Jack Dalton was brought in to bring out the lighter side of MacGyver.
Well, just to give him some texture and color.
Yeah.
He tended to get a little one note, a little, even strain. And Richard, by the third show in every season, he was tired.
Sure.
Because the hours were staggering.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the weekend, he'd have to go do the voiceovers to explain the MacGyverisms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, once they cut that, he was thrilled.
Yeah, when I got there and I did the second show, and they were writing me to chew up the scenery. And I said to him after I did a particularly animated take, I said, look, man, I don't mean to be a scene stealer, but they told me, and before I finished the sentence, he said, please take it, help me. You're welcome, thank you. So yeah. That was I think I'm not sure I made this up or I might've had the line. Well, Mac, it's fair. I get us into trouble, you get us out.
Right.
And I think I actually said that.
Yeah, you did.
That was my dynamic. And we discussed it with the writers. I don't remember whether it ever actually made it to dialogue.
It did.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah. It's funny, too, because whether it was intentional or not from you, there's many quotable lines and reactions because of Jack Dalton. I'll tell you the exactly part that you would do. Right. I was in school. I went to a Catholic school, and it was after, I'm going to say, your first appearance. And I'm walking through the hall, and we had this one, I know it's a cliche, but the nun, one in particular was the head of the mean nuns.
Yeah.
Where, all right, they may not hit you with the ruler, but they made sure that most of these kids were afraid. And she had that stern quality and no humor whatsoever. Well, Now, granted, I'm in grade school, so I'm learning how to balance when to be funny, when not to be funny. You know, don't be a smart mouth, but if you're going to say something, make sure everybody's laughing, including that nun.
Yeah.
So she was perfect for the Jack Dalton dynamic that you were bringing into my mind. And she's walking through the hall, and I didn't think anything of it. And I just said, "Hey, sister," right? I was going up the step, or she was going up the steps. I was going down the hall. "Hey, sister." And she turns to me and goes, "Hay is for horses." And I went, "Exactly." And she chased me down that hall. Now, granted, she was laughing, so I let her catch me, and she basically hugged me, but it was like, you know,
Yeah.
she couldn't help but laugh. And I thought, okay, if I ever get to talk to Jack Dalton, I got to let him know that worked. That was a good, exactly. So, and like I said, from a viewer's point of view, you didn't realize what you said about MacGyver being one note, because being the lead on the show and typically being by himself, he didn't get to be funny, because if he was funny, now he would be obnoxious, because you can't be that smart and be the sarcastic mouth
And be in every frame.
Right. So then Jack Dalton comes along, and you go, oh, because as charming and goofy as Jack Dalton was, it played perfect with Rick being the straight guy.
Yeah, and he could get exasperated and quote unquote angry with me, but there was still love behind it. So
yes,
so he got to, that was one of the colors that he got to use that didn't diminish his charm.
Right.
Very important. I am back.
Yay.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing I do instead of going to a gym. I do yard work, and it's Texas and it's very hot. So I do it pretty early. I have coffee, liquid. And then I perspire so much. I think there's no way I can drink enough water.
Right.
And so I'm so glad when it's done. And it's really is it's a workout. It's a big area, and I mow it with not a riding mower. And and I'm picking up heavy stuff, and I love it. I hate it, but I love it.
Yep.
Because then when I'm done, I've done something. No matter what else happens that day, I've done something.
Right.
But sometimes I overhydrate. So
okay. Well, hey, in Texas, I don't know if there is such a thing.
There isn't. If you get caught in an interview and then you have to go to the bathroom, there you go. Because I'm not going to catheterize you just to take you.
What's that? Oh, we're having audio problems. What's that tinkling sound I hear? Ignore it. Ignore it.
It's more like a horse on a rock.
It's funny too that you mentioned gardening. I'm not. I love nature, but I don't think of myself as a gardener. But I'm looking at the front of my house a couple of months ago, and I'm like, I don't know flowers, but I know there's the kind that's supposed to grow every year, no matter what. Can we get some of those? And maybe, so now I'm digging with a trough and, doing all that. My wife's laughing because she's like, hey, look at you, Johnny Appleseed. I'm like, I have to make my house beautiful.
You know what? There's one thing to work for somebody else hard. To work for yourself hard is really satisfying. I mean, let's face it, I'm not from royal stock. I'm from, pick up heavy stuff, laborer, peasant stock. I'm on both sides of my family, I'm pretty sure. And it's just, I noticed, like I was away for 3.5 months doing a series in Toronto, and I lost some of my strength and my muscle tone. And when you get to 70 or 71, whatever, you have to do something, or you'll just, I know a lot of 71-year-olds, it's over for them.
Right.
And anyway, I'm back, and I came back, and had been let go. And we're in the process of planning to build. So these are houses that one of which is already torn down. We're living in the other one, and it will eventually be torn down. So it's not like we're going to spend a lot of money landscaping.
Right.
But we have a very rainy summer in Texas. Stuff grows like the jungle. And I was gone for 3.5 months, and I came back, and holy cow, I better get a sharpener for the machete. Anyway, so it's a great thing I do. I'm very happy to do it.
Well, for myself, I always think about the line that Harry Chapin said about at the end of the day, when your head hits the pillow, was it a day you won or was it a day you lost? Meaning, also exactly what you said. Did you do something good for yourself, even though the world may not know about it? Or did you work hard for somebody else who, doesn't necessarily appreciate it?
Yeah. Well, I'm a very lucky guy in the fact that I'm usually appreciated when I work at my job.
Mm.
And my wife and I both appreciate it when I work hard. And I'm like a kid. I want to say, look what I did. Look, see that? See? And when you come back after 3.5 months and it's a mess, and at the end of now, I've been back a few weeks, it's back in shape.
Yep.
And I did it by myself.
That's right.
Very good.
Well, that reminds me, when you were saying about having a say, I noticed you're talking about, Jack Dalton coming back, and thank God, because I remember that too. Like, oh, wait a minute, this guy's one and done. He's gone. I love that guy. We got to see more of him. And then when he did come back, the way they explain it, basically you never saw a body. So guess what? The doctor made a mistake. I'm fine. And then you move on with the story.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I love that. And
TV is very filled with the art of the possible.
Mm-hmm.
What can you? And the audience will forgive everything if they want to see that guy again.
Like Murdoch. How many times can Murdoch die?
Yeah, that's right. It's different now. TV, when in the days of 3 networks and even with Fox when there were 4, it was very different than now.
Mm-hmm.
And like Rizzoli and Isles was great. I hope it would go another few seasons. It was because my part was getting better and better and better, and I loved working with Angie Harmon.
Yeah,
and I loved my character. He was great. He was just a good guy.
Well, they're showing a marathon on, I think it's Lifetime now. So
it makes the rounds. It's
yeah, and I've been watching them.
It's good. It's a good show.
Well, again, from my point of view, it's first of all, do you know? And I'm not being silly when I ask this, because a lot of people don't when they're in the eye of the storm, as they say. Do you know how loved and iconic Jack Dalton is?
Well, nowadays it's only the aficionados like yourself that I really hear from or talk about it. But in the day, I knew Jack Dalton was popular, and then I did one of the new MacGyvers.
Yeah,
with Lucas, and the guy, and I know him. He's a member of my golf club, George, that played Jack Dalton. It was like
George Eads.
It was horrific to me. Because there he is bristling with guns and armor, and he's all surly.
Yep.
And I was just appalled.
Yeah.
And he was a brat. I have to say, the day that I was working, I guess, and this is conjecture.
Sure.
He didn't want to have to come in to do this one little scene. And he was being a spoiled brat. And then he saw I was there. Because he didn't know. I mean, I was called in for this one little scene. And I was hiding behind something where they were shooting at me. And I was hiding behind a box, and he was coming in. He was being just a brat, which I hate.
Sure.
If you're lucky enough to have a good job in a TV show and you're a brat, you should be spanked by that nun that chased you.
That's right.
But when he saw I was there, he straightened up, which made it even worse, because I realized it was kind of a put on behavior because he felt entitled to.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was, as he once called me, actually, meaning to be complimentary. You're a real actor, because I didn't just do MacGyver. I've done
everything,
movies and stuff.
Yeah.
But I thought, okay, that's too bad when he's being that way, because he thinks it's okay unless somebody he respects is there. That's duplicity. I hate it.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you.
If you're going to be a jerk to me too, and that's better than kowtowing to me. And
yeah, because it doesn't feel sincere.
No, it's terrible. It's duplicitous.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yep. And I'll tell you, it's like you were saying, when that show started and they started to look, we're going to pander to the audience and we're going to use the names of classic characters that people love, but they're not going to be anything like, say, Jack Dalton.
Yeah. Well,
everybody went, "What the? Don't do that. Give him a different." They should have named it like Clever Guy or something. They shouldn't have tried to call it MacGyver because.
Well, and again, the showrunner was not as good, solid, and well-rounded an individual as Steve Downing.
Right.
And
right.
Steve, I got to tell you, he worked so hard and so consistently to keep it in this very narrow spot where it was wholesome.
Right.
It stayed wholesome, and there were bad guys. They had guns, but never MacGyver.
Right.
He would disarm them some clever way and make a bridge with a tube sock. But he was just, and a lot of that is Steve and Henry Winkler, but Henry was much less hands-on. He had a deal because of Happy Days.
Right. Which is what made me check out MacGyver. And he had another show called Mr. Sunshine, which didn't last. But because it was Henry Winkler and I loved the Fonz, I'm like, well, I'm going to watch whatever he has. And then when MacGyver started, I went, oh, okay. So this is like nothing I've ever seen.
It was cool. It was very, it was a cool show. I even remember when I was in New York before they ever called me, I watched it and I thought, well, that's kind of cool. That's interesting. But I still wasn't doing TV.
Right.
Because, and I don't even think it was wrong-headed at the time. It was just different. And if you did TV, chances are you would not get the feature roles. And in those days, that was all I wanted was good plays and features. And now I don't care. I just want good parts.
Right.
And I want to be paid.
Sure. Well, I said that to Steve and the writing friends too, that, MacGyver it doesn't, there's nothing nostalgic about it. There's always a very current energy with it. It never feels dated. And the balance that they all had to do with making that show to, like you said, it had to be wholesome, but not preachy. It never felt like you were being talked down to.
It had to be plausible too. And
right.
Even as crazy as some of the stunts were, they were plausible.
Yep. Had to be science based.
Yeah.
And the remake didn't do that, unfortunately.
And I was so lucky because I never got burned out. I think the most I did, I might have done once 3 shows in a row.
You did.
Yep. A couple of times I did 2. That wasn't unusual. But you don't get burned out then. I mean, I'm telling you, the hours were crazy. Every Friday was an 18-hour day, every single one. And I remember one week, this never happened to me anywhere else in my life. I was forced every single day. Forced call, meaning they rest invasion. They give you less than 12 hours off, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And it was very unusual because it costs money. It's like, I think they call it rest invasion now. And it was, back then, it was $950 to do it. It still is, which is ridiculous. That's 30 something years ago, nearly 40. And they haven't changed that number.
Right.
But they don't do it as much now because MacGyver had all the money it needed because there were only 3 networks and it was a big network show.
Sure.
And they just spent the money. But if you do that for 3, 4, 5 weeks in a row, you're tired.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
You got to go home and learn your lines, and you've got to get your sleep, and you've got to travel to the locations. And I just was really glad I didn't, for a while I thought, well, gee, I would have made a lot more money, but I made plenty of money doing other things, to make up for that. And if I had done it full time, there would have been a whole 7 years where I didn't get to do anything else because it was 9 months of the year.
Right.
And so I don't second guess it at all.
Oh, no.
It was a big decision. And they were really pressured me to sign. And John Rich, especially, who was a great character.
Yeah.
He was a bear, but I really liked him. He's just, you talk about a guy who thought he was always right. That was John.
Yeah.
And he wanted me, I had a looping session, ADR. Maybe end of season, second season I did, maybe later, I don't know. And so I was living in New York and I had to fly out to LA to do looping. And there in my ADR session was both executive producers, Henry Winkler and John Rich. That never happens. You get a post-production guy. So I'm going, interesting. So Henry talks, and Henry's a great talker, talk. Then he leaves. and John stays for the whole session. And now I'm leaving. The car is outside to take me back to the airport to fly to New York, where I had a show the next night, on Broadway. Broadway or Shakespeare or something I had to be back to do a play. And John said, why don't you sign up for this thing? And he'd lost patience. He'd quit holding out the gumdrop, and now he was going to beat me with a stick to sign. And I've been saying, I'm doing other things, and it would just be too exclusive. And I'm just, thanks, really appreciate it, but no. So now I'm leaving the stage, and the door is slowly closing. John says, no, why don't you just do this show? You'll get your fuck you money. And I said, what is that? Of course I know what it is. But he said, well, it's the money so you could just say no to any job you want. And I said, oh, John, and I'm letting the door close on me very dramatically. I can say fuck you. I just can't say it too loud. And the door closed. It was timed perfectly. It was one of my finer moments. And it was a soundproof door, but I could imagine him going, ah! No! Yeah, exactly. And so that was it. And they realized I was not going to be a series regular. I'm glad I didn't.
And I'll tell you again, it's hindsight and all, but yeah, because they brought you back enough that it always felt special. If Jack showed up, you went, oh, it's going to be one of these.
Yeah.
It's and
Ricky
also
was happier. Ricky was happier because he had more help.
Right.
He had a known quantity of help, and the writers were happier because they wanted to write much more for Jack Dalton than they could get me for. And that's just, it's like it's just better dynamic for the actor.
Well, go ahead?
No, I just say if you don't desperately need to be a regular, in those days, it was better not to if you were valuable to the production.
And you always knew that they were going to call you back. Yeah,
they did, and right up to the end. And it was a good experience. I really enjoyed the whole thing, partly because I never got stuck in it and I never got fried.
And also, and again, when you really pay attention to these episodes, you were not a one-note character. They really forwarded your story. Okay, so Jack comes on, he's the zany guy, he's the lovable zany guy, and there's that balance of you don't want him to be annoying because now nobody's going to like him, but you just wanted to always hug Jack Dalton. Even though he could be a pest, like you said, they'd hug each other. Like it was, apparently, they knew each other growing up. It was that. He was a childhood friend.
Exactly our dynamic.
And so you go, okay, I like it, and that's good. But had Jack Dalton been there all the time, I think that zaniness would have been lost, because through being there constantly, well, your story has to move forward. So you can't come in and go, hey, Mac, I got, I have this idea. And
I got this idea. Well, that's the other thing I did say to my representation, not necessarily to the production. I said, if they have me there and they own me all the time, they will quit writing for me. I'll just be like, I call it the Jingles Syndrome. There was a series in the 50s, Wild Bill Hickok, and Andy Devine played a character named Jingles. And Jingles was there all the time, but he was just he was easy to minimize because he was just this sidekick. And I always remember him riding his horse badly, trying to catch up to Wild Bill, going, hey, Wild Bill, wait for me. Right. And so I didn't want to get into the Jingles Syndrome.
Yeah.
And, I'm very happy with the decision and the choices, and whatever frustration they had is long past.
Oh, yeah. Well, because everybody talks highly of you, so.
Well, I never let them down, and I was never there enough to piss them off.
That's true.
There were some interesting things where, like the episode that I thought my mother was dead and she comes back.
Ma Dalton. Yeah, I was going to mention that one. That's a heck of an episode.
Well, I did this scene where she comes back and then there's something that she rejects me again, something.
Yeah, she's playing poker upstairs and you walk in and say, it's me, I'm your son. And she goes, what do you want, an award? Or, kind of brushes you off.
Well, I did the reaction scene to that as I would in any drama, because that's a pretty dramatic moment. You think your mother is not alive, and she there, and then she rejects you. And so I played it, and really well. You know, rare on MacGyver, but as soon as cut, applause from the crew. Very rare on MacGyver. And so I was feeling, all right, there you go. There's some acting for you. Put that in your film. Put that in your show. A few days later, I see Steve Downing kind of pacing outside my trailer. Steve is usually not a pacer. And so he finally knocked on the door. And I said, hey, Steve, come in. He said, we're going to have to reshoot that. It's too, what was the word he used? It's
intense,
too dramatic. And he described to me how there's this horizon, and MacGyver never goes, the tone of the show never goes too heavy, never goes down to the real way a kid who thinks he's an orphan is then rejected by his mother who turns out to be alive. Mm-hmm. That's devastating. That's high drama.
Yeah.
And so that's how I played it. And the director was on board. You know, we were all thinking we're doing this great, but it was too intense. And I think it was that his word, intense, something like that. Too dramatic, too intense. It just was too emotional. And so we had to reshoot it and lighten it up. And I said that in that moment, I thought, I see, this is why I get certain directions or certain lines get changed or cut, is they never want to go too silly or too serious. Mm-hmm. And that's what I mean by that narrow channel.
Yeah.
Steve kept the show in. But he told me later, he said that was a really hard conversation to have because it was so good.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't right for our show.
I would love to see what take the original one was, because, you know, there's a couple episodes, there's Rock the Cradle with the baby.
Yeah.
And you think it might be, you know, yours and Ma Dalton. Those are two where that and the one where you're brainwashed. You know, those are three episodes in particular where Jack doesn't have to be silly now. And all the other ones, he's, you know, zany, and there was the 2-part Lost Love.
Right.
And that's great. But those three really gave you something to work on. And like, it was really intense. And you went, wow. So Jack actually has more layers to him than just being the pain in the rear end guy.
Yeah, but he went too deep and got spanked by the producer.
Wow.
And that was a real eye-opener to me. And that is one of the things that made me realize maybe that is partly why I was reticent to be a regular.
Sure.
Because there are limitations that are where my expertise and strength lies in going all the way, you know, making it as real, as impactful as I can make it, given the material. And so it was like a governor screw on this whole show. Mm-hmm. So, you know, what do they call it? Electronically controlled top speed on cars now. They fix it so it can't go as fast as it could go.
Yeah. And
I didn't like that. I mean, I like working with Michael Mann in The Insider, where it's like the amp goes to 11. Well, go ahead, go to 12. And it just, it was a limiting sort of discipline, the tone of the show.
Well, I'll tell you, from an audience point of view, I didn't feel that anything was cut. Like it you know, again, I've watched them a trillion times. Every time I'm like, okay, this, because you could still feel that that's Jack Dalton. You could still, you know, like you never became dark. It was never like.
No, they would not. That's I learned that. There will never be, that you never can go dark.
Which is wonderfully jarring when I see movies like Exit Wounds, where you became the bad guy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look at, there's Bruce. Okay. Ooh. And then in the end, when that was one of those where you flip and you're bad.
Yeah.
And it, as you know, the guy who knows Jack Dalton going, ooh, boy.
You know, it's really hats off to Steve and the guys, because that's a difficult thing to do consistently.
Yeah.
And ride herd on your writers and your cast and your directors to make sure it stays in that channel. because he knew, I think, that you were out there, you and people like you, who were comfortable with that show the way it was. And he kept it in that channel. And that's very admirable.
Honest to God. I told him that too. I said, to walk that fine line and always keep the quality and make it, like I said, timeless, where you can watch this today and not go, oh, this doesn't work anymore. No, it does. It really, it set a bar. I'll tell you that show, and coincidentally, Stargate SG-1 set such a fine, high bar on every level that now when you see other shows, and we can use, the remake as an example, you go, no, I can't accept anything less. It has to be that quality.
Well, it's you got to be careful with rehashes, especially of series. Remakes of films every 20 or 30 years, okay, but you won't catch a remake in Animal House.
Right. Or if you do, God help them.
Yeah. Well, and they didn't get the sequel done. They wanted to, and then there was a writer's strike, and then they wanted to, and then Belushi died. And that was the end of the story. And of course, I would have been the first, really good payday in a feature if we'd done it. But I'm really glad that it stands alone, and it's not a series of, Animal House movies. It's one little, really good period movie.
Yeah. Delta House, was that a series? Was that a TV series?
That was. And it wasn't horrible, but it was very misbegotten because they put it on at 8:00. So 8:00 on a network, you couldn't have any of the raunch that made Animal House. So it was hamstrung from the get-go.
Sure.
Because it was watered down, and it was expensive because it was a half-hour film show, and we would do stunts like a car hanging off of the building and stuff, and it was just too expensive, and it didn't get the number. If it had gotten the numbers, they'd have done it, but it didn't get the numbers.
Well, with the it's funny too. This is gonna sound silly, but and I know that you said you eventually got to have a say with the look of Jack Dalton. Was that just the way you showed up, or did they say we'd like you to, keep your mustache, and because the mustache is iconic?
Yes, well, the mustache, I like that mustache a lot because of D-Day. Yep. And when I started doing Animal House, I had been doing the Duke d'Orléans in Henry V and Shakespeare in the Park. And I had shoulder-length hair and that big mustache. And so the first meeting of the Deltas and the director in Eugene, Oregon, we were having dinner. Studio was picking up dinner for all the Deltas. And John Landis said, okay, first order of business. Does D-Day get to keep his mustache? And all the Deltas raised their hands. Yes, yes, yes. So I thought, that's awesome. So then Landis wanted me to get a haircut like Lee Marvin in The Wild Ones, which is basically a buzz cut. And I had a better idea. I said, there's this haircut from when I was a kid in the 50s and 60s, which is a flat top with fenders or a Chicago boxcar. He didn't know what it was. He was too young. And I said, look, it is perfect. If you don't like it, we can cut the sides off. It'll be what you're looking for. So he didn't have any conception of what it was because he was, younger than I. So I was the second to the last to get my hair cut, and my hair was my shoulders. And Belushi wouldn't get his haircut because he was doing Saturday Night Live, and he said, no, I'm not going to get my hair cut. Landis said, you have to, you have to, you have to, you have to, which only made John, I won't. So I was the second one to go. And bear in mind, I'm going from shoulder-length hair, sort of summer sun-bleached blonde, if you will. And then we found this barber that had done 20 a day in Chicago, a real barber.
Yeah.
He did it in like 10 minutes, had that thing perfect. And so Landis saw it and he went, it's great. And I promise you, not very rarely would you see that kind of mustache and that haircut because they were completely mismatched in time. But he saw it, he loved it. So he said, we got to show Belushi. So he held the barber's cape up like a reveal.
Sure.
And got John over and said, John, look, and dropped the cape, and there was D-Day. And Belushi went, I'll get my hair cut. So he sat down and got his haircut too. So that's what I had when I arrived to shoot Animal House. And I liked it. I mean, it was a cool mustache because it wasn't completely uniform. And it wasn't completely uniform because I had been hit in the lip in a fight earlier in my life. So one side, it sort of looks like a big mustache and a stiff wind from one side.
Okay.
And I kind of like that. I mean, like as Michelangelo said, there is no perfection except for God. So everything that he ever did has a little imperfection in it. So I thought, okay, this is a perfect mustache because it's not perfect. Yeah. And I just thought it was great for the guy, the motorcycle guy and everything. So that was something that I used whenever I could. And I really thought it was good for Jack Dalton because when you put the World War II Flyers hat on, it was very rakish. It was very sort of RAF with the scarf. Mm-hmm. And it just was evocative of a different time and a guy who more of not a cartoon figure, but a mythical figure.
Right. And I always see Jack Dalton thinking of himself that way.
Yes.
As like, no, you don't understand. In this room, I may be MacGyver's friend, but in my other times, I am the hero. I am wearing the jacket and the hat and
I'm a short D'Artagnan.
Yeah, exactly. Flying the plane. Yeah, it works.
It was a great part. And I got to sit in and start, if not fly, so many different kinds of aircraft. Mm-hmm. I mean, the best was the DC-3.
The big gray one?
What?
Was that the big gray one?
Yeah.
Okay.
With twin engine, it's a great airplane. They still use it to fly in and out of places with very short runways.
Actually, I was going to tell you that the latest, it crashed. They said Jack Dalton's plane, which was used to carry, food to refugees here and there, and they did still use it. It apparently crashed recently, and it's kaput.
There's no more. Well, there's still some of them working. That one, the one that we had, it was being used to fly flowers, and in fact, I think they were flying loads of flowers from South America to markets in the United States. Real flowers, not pot.
Right.
And we knew that because it's just a big hollow cargo bay. Mm-hmm. The way that was configured, and there were flowers with stems stuck, between the bracing and the sides. Huh. So there was like 10 or 15 bits of flour left in it the day we shot with it.
Wow.
But yeah, it was cool. I got to do that, start that. I started helicopters. The conceit that this goofy guy could fly anything. I loved that.
Yeah.
Or whether he thought he could or not, he'd try. It's true. Basically, aeronautics are aeronautics.
Right.
And if you understand lift, and the controls are all, helicopters are a little different, but as long as it's a prop plane and you fly a lot of prop planes, you can figure it out.
Sure. So, flip that switch, flip that one, Yeah.
Make sure that foot, check it out. That works. Let's go.
And you never heard Jack Dalton go, no, I'm sorry, I can't fly that. In his mind, I could fly anything.
Exactly.
Landing, on the other hand, not so much.
Yeah. He was a really interesting, optimistic, upbeat guy.
Right.
And every get rich quick scheme he had brand new excitement for.
Yep.
And that, let MacGyver roll his eyes and still love the guy, but go, oh God, what now?
Honest to God. And you know what? I'll tell you, there's been people in my life who have been my Jack Dalton, because I watch true to life, many of these characters on these shows. And since you watch him a trillion times, you go, who that guy reminds me of in my life? It's that guy, a little bit of this guy, a little bit of that guy. But I always had the friend who would go, hey, Mac, I need your help. Well, okay, what? Don't worry about it. Just come with me. I'm like, oh, you're going to Jack Dalton me, aren't you?
Well, that's, you're a much better audience of the show than I was, because I guess I watched a few of them back when I made them. Mm-hmm. But, occasionally now my wife and I, we're somewhere, and now everything lives online, streaming. Mm-hmm. And we'll find one and watch a little of it. And it's interesting now because it's so long ago. Mm-hmm. And it was just good. And he was such a, positive guy, not a mean bone in his body. And just, infectious. It was a great part.
He was like a little kid, really.
Exactly. He was perennially a kid.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
no matter how you beat him down, he would forget that. It's like they tell me that women forget the pain of childbirth and they never have another.
Yeah.
So Jack would, well, another failure is just closer to success.
That's right. And it was a wonderful addition to the series.
Yeah. Well, thanks. You're a great audience.
Well, thanks. Still am. And teaching my children the same too. I'll show them and they're inspired. And if, to know me is to know that part of my DNA is MacGyver, and so they're gonna see it whether they wanted to or not. Well, they become addicted to it too. And they're like, when they found out that I was getting to talk to you, they're like, you get to talk to him? I'm like, yep. And then the other day when we were on the phone, my son is sitting off to the side and he'll listen to these episodes of this podcast a trillion times.
Really? How old are you?
My son is 12 and my daughter is 9.
It's great. And another thing that MacGyver, anybody, any age can watch. And my mother loved it because I never killed anybody. I never cussed. Mm-hmm. And except for the first one, I never died. Because a lot of the movies I do are pretty rough.
Sure. Yeah.
Language and violence and stuff. Mm-hmm. So it was wonderful to have something that went on for that long that you can recommend to anyone.
Right.
It's like, and it's rare. I mean, I just did a movie for Netflix called The Blue Miracle. It's one of those that everybody in the world with kids can watch, and people are looking for something they can sit down and watch with their kids. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of stuff you just can't, or you don't want to.
Right. And in today's world, everything has to be edgy and everything has to be dark, and every hero actually has to be a villain, and you're only fighting other villains. And I'm like, well, I can't show my kids that. They've
got to be LGBTQ and OPQ.
Exactly. And my kids just want to enjoy something. They don't want to be cursed at, or there might be a flash of boobies or something.
Not on MacGyver.
No, that's right.
It was a good, clean show, and it was a great thing to do in its time.
Yeah. And it's like I said, it's iconic, and your character's iconic. Do you remember one of the things that you got to have a say about? Since you brought it up, I was curious, because now I'm going to go back and watch these episodes and be
so much of my work was the heavy lifting of exposition. Mm-hmm. And I just accepted that. In fact, that's a general note for my whole career. If you can deliver exposition in an entertaining fashion with energy and not hate it, Richard hated it. He called it laying pipe.
Right.
He hated to lay the pipe. Another reason he liked having me on board, because I would get it, and sometimes it would be pages of talk, and they'd want to shoot it all one morning. And I just learned it. I came out of the theater and doing Shakespeare, and so I would just do the homework. And I always do, I still do, because acting is really fun if you know your stuff, and it would be horrible if you didn't. If you were on a film set and you're one of those guys who doesn't know his lines, I mean, that to me is like,
yeah,
everybody hates you.
Yep.
And they should. Mm-hmm. And if you're one of these guys who just really can't do it, which I doubt, that's too bad. But if you're one that just thinks you're better if you don't really know the lines exactly, or it's just laziness, I think.
I agree. Like your job is, like you said, show up, be someone pleasant to work with, and know your lines.
No, at the bare minimum. Right. And your question about input, if I thought I could make something a little cleaner in some of those big expositional speeches, or a little more accessible to an audience and a little more much fun, I would do that. Mm-hmm. And they were receptive, but it was, we were shooting pretty fast. There was a lot of stuff you have to shoot that's not dialogue. Mm-hmm. So when they get to the dialogue, they can whip off 7 or 8 pages quickly. They want to. So right. I didn't do, and they were pretty careful with it, and I didn't push around. I didn't fight much. I just did it.
Sure. Well, and also, it helps if you have a crew that's open to, you should feel comfortable if you go, can I try something? I've had some directors who go, no, and others who are like, yeah.
one of my favorite moments, because I do prepare a lot, especially in television, network series television. We'll come to work, do the scene. I'll do take one. And the director goes, wow, well, that's good for me. Now do it any way you want to. And I said, what in the world makes you think I didn't do it the way I want to the first time? They'll say, oh, so you're good with that? And I said, yeah, that's how I would wanted to do it. Okay, let's move on. And they're thrilled. But that always strikes me as funny is that they think when it's that well prepared and executed, that I didn't do it the way I wanted to the first time. And what they're really meaning is now, is there another color you'd like to explore?
Sure.
Because often I do that. And not so much with MacGyver, because Jack Dalton, as loose and freewheeling as he seemed to be, served a very specific purpose in those shows. And by the third or fourth, I realized what it was. So I just embraced that discipline. But other shows, like, the things that are open to interpretation, I may say, okay, I would like to try one now with either a little more or a little less schmaltz. And inevitably, if you get the first one right, they'll give you another one. And then I'll just say, let's give the editor some options. And if it's Michael Mann, I know that the editor is Michael Mann. He's got an editor, but he's there for everything.
Yeah.
And I'll say, look, let me give you some options. Sure, yeah, great. And because I just don't know how the whole thing's going to go together. And someone, you work with Michael Mann, he is as meticulous as a watchmaker. So if he changes something early in the film, he may need to change things all through till the end to now be driven by what he changed in the beginning. And his analogy is, he said to me one time on The Insider, he said, I was back for ADR for the umpteenth time. I said, yeah, Michael, I don't mind. It's great to see you, but how come we're doing this ADR for the smallest part so many times? He said, did you ever drive a Formula One car? And I said, no, Michael, I never got to drive a Formula One car. He said, well, this movie is like that. It's like you're going into turn one, you put a little bit of input, and if you don't fix it, you'll slide off the track in turn four. So that was his analogy. It was like driving a very right on the edge car, sports car. So any input early had to be accounted for later. So he would go right through the movie and adjust things. But he's very unusual. I mean, he's unusual in the fact that his budgets would allow that, or he would pay for it himself. On Ali, he would pay for it himself.
Nice.
But he's great. I love working with him. He has a reputation as being tough to work with, but he was never to me. I just think he's great.
I think if you understand what you're dealing with, you go, oh, okay. It's all about, it's about the final product. It's not about ego. And
no, it's excellence.
Yeah.
It's excellence and a real, he does not suffer fools. Not even gladly, not at all. He'll make them cry.
With my takes for stuff, it'd usually be do it 3 times, but you have to do it 3 different ways. And that would be for like audio stuff too.
Right. Sure.
Like, I now have my audio series that I write and perform and everything. But I try to do, because I remember that from doing film stuff, 3 different ways, but do it different. And that way you pick the one that you like the best.
Yeah, but there's no point doing it the same way twice unless everybody likes it and wants it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
The actor who's the star, I'm thinking Nick Nolte now. That's perfect. Do it like that. So I did it like that in every angle. Sure, Nick, you're the guy.
Yeah, if you say so,
But I just still enjoy it. I enjoy preparing, probably because I enjoy being sharp on the day. And then you have the only way you have really freedom creatively is to know exactly where the boundaries are. So you're not wondering, am I going over the boundaries here? So what seems to be constricting to some people, to me, is liberating, because I know exactly what's too far that way and what's too far the other way. And so I stay in that lane. And that lane can be a dirt road or 6-lane highway. But by really knowing, I'm referring sort of to that when I realized how MacGyver was in this channel, that it couldn't be too intense, it couldn't be too dark. That you're eliminating, basically 50% of the human experience. If it's a horizon, as Steve and I talked about it, everything has to stay above that horizon of darkness. So you can have degrees of darkness compared to the light, but they can't go to real dark.
Right. Right.
That's me. Then I know my boundaries, and I'm completely free because I know where I can't go.
And it always felt effortless, you know? And again, when you watch him a trillion times, I could watch. First, before I go on, I just want to tell you one thing. It's effortless to watch Jack Dalton because you never felt that he was a caricature, which is hard to do with that character.
Everything I've done, Animal House, everything.
It was never over the top.
Because you're going to play it honestly.
Right.
And when some shows I've done, and they, like the multi-camera sitcom where whichever writer wrote that joke laughs too loud and falsely in the read-through, and they want you to make it funny when it's not. And that, to me, is why I don't do much of that stuff, because it's too much false. It's too much. They think it's funny, so they'll have you push the reading a little, and then they'll sweeten it with a laugh track. But to me, that makes me feel like a dirt that no shower will remove.
Yeah, I know. Like, no, I didn't earn that. That wasn't me.
That bullshit is what I say. That is bullshit. I'm not doing this. And
well,
now, I don't have to do any job that I don't want to for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And it's great because my life, I'm very comfortable, and I was a disciplined investor and saver and all that. So my time when I'm not working is great. Mm-hmm. And when I do decide to do one, it's great. So, now all I do is I just got to stay healthy.
Right. Well, sure. And honest to God, what about the fact that that's now an issue with the world? I can't.
So difficult.
Right.
And you can probably hear it in my voice. I have this thing. If I do an interview, maybe the first 15 minutes, I have my regular voice, and then it starts to go. And my wife, this has been the last year. You have water. I don't know what it is. I'm thinking I have an uncle who lived to be in his 90s, and he's like, oh, his voice got like that right there. So I'm thinking, is that where I'm going? What can I do? So I just got to pull out the guitar, and instead of just playing, I got to sing.
Sing, yeah. And
see if that's it. And if it's something that's just congenital and there's nothing I can do about it, then I can still be a character actor. But I'm going to give it a shot because I was a pretty good singer.
Well, how did you like doing vocal work for, like, just the audio for, say, animation?
Oh, loved it.
Right? You can do it in your pajamas.
Yeah, exactly. I never go out in my pajamas because I don't wear any. But, wear shorts and flip-flops. I love that. And I love voiceover work. And I did a bit of it, but it's such a percentage game. And now that I've moved out of LA, it's just, I'm not going to pursue it anymore.
Yeah.
I have some people that I work with that do political things, and in presidential election years, they may call for governor, and I'll do some of those. But I'm not retired, but I'm not scrambling anymore,
mm-hmm.
and I don't miss that at all. The whole audition process, and gee, I hope they pick me, because God, that's tough.
Right.
And I thought after 50 years, that's enough of that.
Well, a friend of mine who you would know, I think he was at the same award show, Mike Nesmith.
Sure.
He said, it's like, yeah, all right, I understand how old I am, but I work when I want to work, and I have the luxury of, if I don't feel like it, I don't do it.
Yeah, he's a pretty great guy.
Isn't he?
Yeah, he was great. His speech at that was the Texas Film Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
That was really good. He's much more than a monkey, I'll tell you.
Oh, he's amazing. He's been I don't know who your biggest musical influence is, but for me, it's him. And to meet him and to be welcomed, I mean, I can say we've become friends because when he finally did meet me, he's like, oh, Mac Jackson, get over here, and gives me a big hug. And I'm like, you know who I am? He's like, yeah, I know who you are.
That's great, isn't it?
Yeah. And to be a guy who, when you love something, you dive in head first. You want to know all that you can. And then to meet him and go, oh no, this guy is just as great as everything I heard about. And so inspirational too.
Yeah, and he keeps on keeping on.
And that's the thing too. Cause I said, if he wanted to at this age, you've done it. You've done more than 10 men can do in a lifetime. If you wanted to just sit around and I don't know, watch TV, nobody would give you a hard time. He's like, nope, got things to do.
One person would give him a hard time, himself.
Exactly. Isn't that the truth?
You can't really sit completely still. That's why, even though it's yard work, it's work. And then I can sit and watch the golf tournament.
Right. Because you feel like, no, I've earned this now. I was out there in the yard or whatever doing.
Some people have a very bad reaction to, God, I didn't do a damn thing today. And I'm one of those. I need to do a damn thing every day.
Mm-hmm.
Not brushing your teeth doesn't count.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a thing.
Yeah.
You have to pick something heavy and move it, or,
feel like you made the world a better place in some percentage.
Yeah, at least your world.
Yeah, exactly.
If everybody did that to their world, it would be a pretty good world.
Yeah.
There's a whole other class of people. We didn't get into that.
Yeah.
Well, they're just a drag.
And it kills me. That's the thing I struggle with personally is, you get to a certain age or maturity, quote unquote, where you go, okay, I need to make something out of my life. I want to show that I mattered. When I'm gone, I want to make sure that the world was better off than before. And okay, so that's a good personal thing. But when you look around, you see that people will get up, go to their job, come home, watch TV, go to bed. I think you could do more. Well,
at least those people have a job. The ones that get me are turning us into the land of the outstretched palm.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
I very much so.
And the guys that play into that to get votes. I mean, to me, it's like the end of the dream. And you must worry about it more than I do because you have children. I do not. So in a way, I mean, it's either you call it selfish, call it lazy, whatever. I just thought, God, there's too many people. Mm-hmm. And I'm sort of my own patron of the arts, because I realized early, this country doesn't just pay you to be an artist. You have to find a way. You have to trade. You have to be in commerce somehow. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But it's still, by far the best place on the planet as far as I'm concerned. But sometimes they pull off some head shaking stuff.
I know.
And who knows in this pandemic, which we think it should have run its course, and it shifts and mutates. And who knows how long? I mean, some people, smart people say, well, this pandemic will just become endemic and it'll just be here and we'll get better at dealing with it. Yeah. But I'm really, my activities are very limited now compared to what they were before.
Sure.
I'm vaccinated, and even though I mask all the time, because I don't know, the thing is a shifting poison. Mm-hmm. And, people of a certain age, as they keep telling us, are at risk. So, things I really wanted to do, like a celebrity golf tournament, one of my favorite events, I just withdrew because California's got a surge of not just the Delta, but now they've got the Lambda and the Mu.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
So
like cheapers. If people just wear their darn mask, it's, in the beginning when this started, I thought, all right, well, we'll be inconvenienced for a couple weeks, maybe a month, because everybody will stay inside. And, then it'll pass and it'll kill itself off. But then you got these people, like even my aunt the other day went to go get a phone, and she's, late 70s, and she walks in and doesn't understand phones. She just goes, I have to get a new one of these. And the guy's like showing her stuff, and he's getting real close to her. And she goes, did you get your shots? Oh, it's a scam. And the kid's like 21. And she went, okay, well, see ya. Bye. Thank you very much. And left.
Well, there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of stuff you can see online that supports that it's worse than a scam. It's like a planned way to control the world.
Yeah.
And I'm not one of those, but
right.
They're out there.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to line up for a booster, but my wife probably won't. And she just says, I'll just stay away from people because, frankly, sometimes we find out that we are really happy without having to interact with the rest of the world.
I'm with you. I know that year of not seeing people, I'm like, I miss the option of going places, but man, I kind of like just this downtime.
Yeah, well, if you're happy with your mate and your family, you're lucky.
Yeah.
And that's our situation. It sounds like it's yours too. Mm-hmm. And then this is just, okay, the best thing to do is don't go out there. Mm-hmm. We go to grocery shop the very first moment the store is open because they've just cleaned it, and there's not that many people get up that early to go grocery shopping. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And if we do everything else, it's a caper. It's a military operation. If it's a short errand, I'll be the driver, the getaway driver. Drop her at the door, pick her up.
Yeah.
We both do. It's like, okay, you go to the aisles, those aisles, I'll do these aisles. I'll see you back here. And as fast as we can, in and out.
Bing, bang, boom. I said that to Steve too. I'm like, how you dealing with this? He's like, I live by the beach. I get to see my family. I'm fine with it.
When they moved from the beach to Palm Springs, they thought that'd be a good idea.
Yeah.
He always wanted to go back to the beach. And I'm glad he's back there.
Yeah. But he's like, yeah, whatever. I'm like, that's the right attitude to have. Just do your part.
There's another thing that I live by. Bloom where you were planted.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, well, because that's the way it's going to be. So bloom.
Yeah, you kind of just roll with the flow.
Yeah, like even mushrooms, they grow in shit. Even that.
Well, now I don't want a mushroom. Jeez.
Well, that's psilocybin mushrooms. You don't need those. If you do in Texas, you could go down by the beach, not the beach, but the coastal plains, where it's very humid and they run a lot of cattle.
Mm-hmm.
And you could go down there. I haven't done this since the 60s. But you take a cheap styrofoam ice chest and pick up these cow turds with these psilocybin mushrooms growing in them, put them in that ice chest, and you'll have them growing for days because it keeps the environment. And you can just clip them and take your trip.
Wash them off.
Oh, yeah. Well, mushrooms, that's a whole other conversation. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's about all I got time for today.
I was going to let you go. I just wanted to tell you, what, the one shame that my wife brought this up. She goes, you know what? Out of all the people from MacGyver, because a lot of that crew from MacGyver went over and eventually ended up on Stargate, SG-1, which again, you could tell because the excellence just followed over from one show to the other. She goes, Bruce was never on there. I'm like, no, that's the one regret. That I wish somebody had tapped you on the shoulder and got you on there.
I think there was a time I was doing something else and one came up and, and who knows, I don't know, but I never did do one and I never really thought about it much. Whenever I would see Richard, and I don't see him anymore, I don't know who does, but he was, great. We have a lot in common. We had that 6 years or whatever it was. And it was a good relationship, really was.
Yeah. I saw him in October at a con. I'm trying to get him on the show. He's like, yeah, I'll do it. But like you said, you got to pin him down to
exactly. That's why I kept saying I want to get this done, even though there's no deadline.
Right.
So I can move on because
it's also on your mind. You're like, all right, this is a thing. Handle it.
List. Check it off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you. Because I'm thrilled to get to know you and
pleasure.
Chat with you.
He was right. You're a delightful and thorough fellow. And obviously one of the world's great MacGyver audiences.
Well, thank you, sir. It means a lot to me.
It means a lot to us too.
Good. I will talk to you later.
Okay, Mac.
Thanks again.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye. The MacGyver podcast is part of the Forever Adventure Network. Some original artwork by Joseph Arnold. Donations can be made at Patreon to Mac Jackson. Look for our group pages on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at MacGyver Podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review. And remember, stay creative, everyone. Do you love action and adventure? Then you have to try the Forever Adventure Network. It has everything, from podcasts to audio series to music. It's got blogs, fan groups, comic strips, and 3 different stores for your pop culture and adventure needs. Join us today. We'll be proud to have you as part of the adventure. The Forever Adventure Network. Welcome to the adventure.